KOIN 6, your local election headquarters. This is the debate for Oregon's Secretary of State.
And welcome back to the Oregon Secretary of State debate here on KOIN 6. I'm Jeff Gianola. Your candidates, Republican State Senator Kim Thatcher and Democrat State Senator Semia Fagan, standing by as we begin our second and final half hour of this debate. And here's a question. 2020 is not only an election year, it is a census year, which means district lines will be redrawn. The Secretary of State can play a major role in redistricting if the governor and legislature cannot reach an agreement. And that's why Mark in Portland sent us this question, asking each candidate, please describe how you anticipate carrying out this responsibility of redistricting. You have a minute to answer this question. We'll begin with you, Senator Thatcher.
Well, thank you. I have all along supported the independent redistricting proposal that was supported by a wide spectrum of people, political views. So we have people from the NAACP to the League of Women Voters to the Taxpayer Association of Oregon. Unfortunately, it could not make it to the ballot, and there are maybe some other reasons for that, but the point is I've committed all along that if it didn't make it to the ballot, that I would adopt the process that was put in place and having an independent commission to put people before politicians. I don't like the process that we've had in place where it's very partisan. You have the legislators drawing the lines for where they're going to have, they're picking their voters basically. And I would want to put in an independent commission, much like is outlined in the initiative petition 57 that didn't quite make it on the ballot.
Senator Fagan, the same question. You have a minute.
Redistricting is incredibly important. It essentially charts who will be and what our representation looks like for the next decade. I will note that under the way that it's currently structured in the Oregon Constitution, Senator Thatcher is the only one who actually has voted on her own legislative district back in 2013 when she supported the lines as they're currently drawn. But there was a proposal, and I will support a People's Commission, which is both an independent commission, but that is based in racial equity and folks who've been historically left behind. When we're talking about the census, we can't leave behind the fact that when our country was first founded, some people weren't even counted as full people. And so I think it's important when we talk about redistricting, which is based on the census and is based on that wonderful sacred value of one person, one vote, of equal representation, that we do that in a way that actually has a People's Commission that looks like the people of Oregon who will be drawing those lines and determining what our state looks like for the next decade.
Let's go back to our panel with KOIN 6 political reporter Lisa Balick and Peter Wong, the Salem bureau chief of the Pamplin Media Group, including the Portland Tribune. Lisa, let's start with you. Your question.
It's a question for Senator Thatcher. Earlier, I'd asked Senator Fagan about the PAC money. Question for you is about how you joined the Republican lawmakers several times in past sessions as a walkout to try and block legislation that you didn't like. What does it say about your willingness to work with others?
Well, I've spent 16 years in the legislature, and I have enjoyed working across the aisle. It's just been in the past couple of sessions that there have been some issues. And it really boiled down to the fact that people's rights to have their voices be heard in the referendum process were being completely blocked. And not only that, they were just not being listened to. And there was a lot of problems that were not being brought forward that needed to have some attention on them. And if it had been able to go to the voters, or at least had no emergency clause on it so it didn't block the people from putting it on the ballot, you would have seen nothing new. It probably would have passed, and the people probably would have put it on the ballot, and we would see what would happen with it now. But as it stood, the people's right to the referendum and having their voices heard on this big question that would affect everybody all over the state was just not being had.
Senator Fagan, 30-second rebuttal.
Well, I would encourage Senator Thatcher to look at the Oregon Constitution, Article 4, Section 1. The initiative and referendum process has been in there for over 100 years. So, Oregonians, your voice can never be silenced for any law that is passed. Even the Oregon Constitution, you can always gather signatures to put that on the ballot. But what she's not telling you is that the walkout, the first walkout in May of 2019, was actually over the Student Success Act. a bill that helped fund our schools and early childhood education, and the Republicans weren't willing to come back until the Democrats killed proposals to implement gun safety and public health guidelines around vaccines.
30-second rebuttal, Senator Thatcher.
Putting an emergency clause on a bill cuts off effectively any ability for the question to be called on a bill where a person can put and propose to put on the ballot something that the legislature passed, and that's what was being cut off. Yes, the initiative can be done, but by then it'd be so late and it would have to be divided up into so many pieces in order to put it forward, because now it's in chapter and law, and trying to dig all that stuff out of the chapter and law once it's passed would be almost impossible.
Rebuttal, Senator Fagan.
Again, Article 4, Section 1 of the Oregon Constitution, as long as there's a unifying principle, things can be referred to the ballot, even if they're already in statute and chapter and law. Oregonians will be voting on a few of those initiatives led by grassroots organizations just this November. So again, walking out, getting paid on your tax dollars to walk out, to hide from the state police so they don't have to come back and do their job, that is not becoming of somebody who wants to be the good government officer as the Oregon Secretary of State.
Senator Peter, I just made you a senator, Peter, but Peter, your question next.
Well, as long as we're talking about the Oregon Constitution, let's talk about something else the Secretary of State is involved in, and that's being a member of the State Land Board with the governor and the state treasurer. First, do you think we still really need a state land board? We once had a board of control that managed the prisons and the state hospital, but we got rid of that and turned it over to an agency. And then one of the biggest pieces of land that the land board deals with is the Elliott State Forest, which has had a problematic history. What should we do with that piece of land on the South Coast? There's been a proposal to give that to Oregon State University for an experimental forest, but I'd like to ask both of you candidates what your views are on that.
Okay, both candidates, so I think we'll begin with you, Senator Fagan, and then go to Senator Thatcher.
Well, I'm excited to serve on the State Land Board, which of course is a constitutional office. The governor, the treasurer, and then the Secretary of State all serve on the State Land Board. And I'm very proud to be endorsed by the Sierra Club and the Oregon League of Conservation Voters. And I know that it's important to Oregonians that our Secretary of State, who sits on that land board, shares Oregonians' values of conservation. And Peter, you mentioned the Elliott State Forest, which is our largest old-growth forest, 82,000 acres. And the very exciting proposal that is actually going to be presented to the State Land Board this fall. And so I don't know that I would have a chance to vote on that, but I'm excited about the proposal, which would be to actually make it a publicly owned state research forest. And so it would be, decoupled from the Common School Fund, so it would be no longer obligated to produce money for the Common School Fund, which, as you mentioned, has been the challenge with the Elliott Forest, but also to make sure that we have public recreational use and habitat conservation while OSU uses that as a public research forest.
Senator Thatcher.
Thank you. Yes, I actually visited the Elliott State Forest and saw the different heights of the trees and where they had been harvested previously, and it was very interesting to see this resource that we have. Unfortunately, it is starting to cost the state of Oregon money. Instead of putting money into this Common School Fund, it is costing the state to deal with the many, things that they have to deal with as far as environmental and habitat issues and judicial decisions. So I think that we would do well to revisit the whole mandates and, well, actually there's not a whole lot of mandate, but the directives and direction that is given in both our Oregon State Constitution, where it says we need to manage lands under its jurisdiction, obtaining the greatest benefit for the people of the state under sound, techniques of land management. What does that look like?
Lisa, your question.
This goes right into what Senator Thatcher was referring to. The job is to manage public lands to, quote, the greatest benefit of the people, yet it's really not defined. What does that mean to both of the candidates? In other words, what would you change? In other words, the emphasis on ecology, the environment, development, recreation. What would you change in terms of managing public lands?
Let's begin with Senator Thatcher, since Senator Fagan went first on the last question.
All right, so what would I change? I think it would be beneficial for the Secretary of State to put together a commission of different stakeholders of the lands having to do with recreational use or ecology concerns, or the working lands, people who are live off the land and make their living from the land, and put a commission together, or a group together to advise on what really is meant by greatest benefit of the people of the state of Oregon. I think when it was put into place that they meant to, preserve the land and be good stewards of the land, but also use the land and benefit the Oregon schools and the Oregon budgets as far as being able to work the land responsibly.
A rebuttal, 30 seconds from Senator Fagan.
Well, I'll tell you one thing I won't do is I would not agree to sell the Elliott Forest to private timber companies for logging, and that's a proposal that was put forward recently, and I want to be very clear with Oregonians that I would not support that. The Secretary of State on the State Land Board helps oversee the Common School Fund, which is not just the Elliott Forest, it's other old-growth forests and other types of property that are intended to actually benefit Oregon schools. Now, it's not as much money as obviously the state revenue and the legislature puts into it, or your property taxes, but it is still money, and any money for our schools as a mom of a second grader is important. And so that's one of the reasons, that's one of the ways that we would use it for the best use, is to make sure that it supports our schools.
Lisa, follow-up question.
Yeah, with the state land issue, it's kind of interesting. How would you raise more money for schools through state land then, with the challenges that we're facing in terms of funding schools, as you mentioned, as well as the challenges with what to do with the land that you essentially can't get back?
Senator Fagan.
Sure. Well, I think the problem you're referring to, Lisa, is that there used to be limited logging in the Elliott, and then there was some conservation issues, habitat issues that essentially stopped the logging there. And so it's been costing, I think it's about $2.5 million a year, which obviously that's not what the Common School Fund is supposed to do. It's supposed to be managed for the benefit of Oregon schools, not to the detriment and costing money. And that's why I like this OSU, Oregon State Beavers, research forest idea, because it would actually decouple the Elliott from the Common School Fund, and most importantly, compensate the state school fund for the Elliott Forest, and essentially putting money into the state school fund and into those coffers, and then obviously put that Elliott Forest into use as a public research forest, as I've already discussed. That is a way that we would help raise money and no longer cost money for the Elliott Forest in the Common School Fund.
Senator Thatcher, you get your rebuttal.
I would like to see Oregon's forests be put to work responsibly and sustainably so that we can fund our schools again. But also keep in mind the ecological concerns that Oregonians value. They want to keep beautiful forests. They want to make sure that we are being responsible. Nobody wants to see the forests mowed down. But we need to be responsible, manage our forests, harvest them, as in a sustainable way.
Okay, let's go to another viewer question. Candidates, we've mentioned Oregon does not use a lieutenant governor, meaning the Secretary of State is second in line to the governor. Only 3 times in Oregon's history has a Secretary of State needed to replace the governor. Of course, this is a rare event, but it happened recently with Secretary of State Kate Brown assuming the governor's role after John Kitzhaber resigned in 2015. This question from William: how qualified do you feel to become governor if the current governor can't fulfill her term? Senator Fagan.
Well, this is a very flattering question to even think about as a kid who grew up in Dufur, Oregon, with a little over 500 people. But this is a place where folks just need to look at our records. This is on supporting the minimum, raising the minimum wage, paid sick leave, gun safety regulations, Oregon's environment, the issues that matter most to Oregonians, including housing security and college affordability. These are places where Senator Thatcher and I's records really differ. And Oregonians can be rest assured that, having come from where I come from, a family that struggled to make ends meet, my dad was a single parent raising 3 kids by himself in Wasco County, that I take that with me wherever I go. And that's what my legislative record bears out. Both as an Oregon lawmaker and as a civil rights attorney, I've spent my career fighting for other families that are hanging on by a thread. And if needed to serve as Oregon's governor, I would take that fight with me for you and your families to the governor's office.
The same question now to Senator Thatcher. How qualified do you feel to become governor if the current governor can't fulfill her term?
That would be a rare combination of events that would occur before that happens. But yes, I would be prepared to take on that responsibility. As a governor, I think it's most important that we have continuity of our government and we make sure that we don't disrupt things and we just keep things going. And I would support that. But also, I've been a business owner for 28 years, managing lots of people and parts and projects and things like that. So I would have a little bit of background in managing something like that, where I can get people to help me, and we would just make sure that we have continuity of government. That's most important. Okay,
30-second rebuttal. Quick, do you have anything to say to that?
I'll just reiterate again that this is a place, when you're looking at the governor's office, that our records are very, very different on the issues that Oregonians have voted on time and time again, whether it's reproductive choice, gun safety, raising the minimum wage, supporting working families, paid sick leave. Those are issues that I've supported and my colleague has opposed.
Okay. Quick rebuttal to that?
Well, you know, I am running for Secretary of State, and I am looking forward to serving my full term as Secretary of State. If I am elected this fall, then I'm not going to be running for governor in 2022. I am looking forward to serving out my term for 4 to 8 years if I get the opportunity to be elected and then re-elected.
Let's go to our final panel questions, and who we want to start with over there. Lisa, you have a question.
Yeah, just a follow-up, Senator Thatcher, then you're saying that you're pledging that you would not run for that office in 2022 if you became Secretary of State. Is that correct?
Correct.
Same question then for Senator Fagan. Would you pledge tonight you would not run for that office of governor in 2022 if you're elected Secretary of State in order to fill out the full term?
Yes, assuming, as the last questioner asked, that you're not appointed governor through the lieutenant governor function, but barring that, yes, I don't plan to run for governor in 2022. I'm running for Secretary of State in 2020.
Yeah. Peter, what about your question?
You didn't note correctly that while it is a rarity that the Secretary of State rarely succeeds to the governorship, in the past 12 people who have held that office, 4 of them actually ran for the office. That counts Dennis Richardson, who ran for governor before he became Secretary of State. My question is, and I guess we start with Senator Thatcher, to what extent, as the second-ranking constitutional officer in the state, it is appropriate for you to speak out on issues that are not directly related to the functions of the Secretary of State, audits, elections, land board, public records?
All right. Yes, the Secretary of State is essentially the highest official dealing with elections, and as such, they're essentially the referee of these elections. And to be out there rooting for one team or another doesn't seem very fair. I don't think it's appropriate for a Secretary of State to weigh in on ballot measures or issues or, well, things before voters, whether it's a candidate or a ballot issue, if it does not relate directly to the Secretary of State's office. Now, having said that, I think it's important for the governor, as the head of the corporation division, to be the small business advocate and advocate for the businesses that are out there. It was something that I put in place back in 2011, which led to this the small business advocate in the Secretary of State's office, also speaking up for the recommendations auditors have made.
Here's a very important question, and I think oh, I'm sorry, would you like a rebuttal to that, Senator Fagan?
Sure. I just think it's important for Oregonians to know that I'll always be straight with them. They may not always agree with me, but if folks want to know where I stand on this upcoming election, for example, I've been clear with folks that I'm supporting Senator Biden, or Vice President Biden and Senator Harris, And I think it's important either way for people to be consistent. While my colleague here has repeatedly refused to say whether she's supporting Trump again, she has, to her base, appeared at Trump rallies, a Trump cruise just last month. She'll appear on stage with other Republican candidates, including one who has subscribed to the QAnon conspiracy theory, in front of a banner that says Trump 2020. So I think that if you're going to be consistent, be consistent. Don't signal one thing to your base, but then be silent to the rest of Oregonians.
Okay, quick rebuttal.
I'm a Republican candidate, like it or not. I have to appear at different events around the state to get people to vote for me, and I do appear with other Republicans. Now, it doesn't mean I'm supporting them or not supporting them. What it means is I am there as a Republican to promote my race as a Republican Secretary of State who does see this office as a nonpartisan race, and I've been consistently saying that even to my base and even during the primary.
Well, we're coming to an end of this debate hour, but we do have time for our closing statements. That'll be 1 minute. And Senator Fagan, we will start with you.
Well, elections are about choices, and you have a clear choice this fall between a candidate who has voted lockstep with her party to restrict voting rights and one who has led the fight to expand them. One candidate who has stayed silent when misinformation and conspiracy theories have undermined public health and our democracy, and one who has spoken out against those lies, and one who is supported primarily by extreme right-wing organizations, and a candidate who is endorsed by the people that you have trusted for decades. I'm proud to be endorsed by the Oregon League of Conservation Voters, by Senators Merkley and Wyden, by Oregon firefighters and teachers and postal workers, and Oregon nurses, and so many of the other heroes who are serving Oregon families today and every day. But I'm not done until you're on that list. My name is Semia Fagan, and I'm asking for your vote this November or October, whenever your family sits down to vote safely from home here in Oregon.
Senator Thatcher, your final statement.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. You do have clear choices this October or November, and I am the one with the most relevant experience to this job. And I've been a strong and steady leader. I have been in my community for about 3 decades, raised my family there, have 2 upstanding businesses, and I've spent 16 years in the legislature working on things that directly relate to the Secretary of State's office. My opponent has been in the legislature for 6 years, and she has also voted to restrict people's rights to the initiative and referendum process and making it more difficult for people to get their ideas to the ballot. She has actually voted to overturn citizens' initiatives. I feel that if a voter put it into law, the voters need to take it out. You do have clear choices. I see this office as nonpartisan, and my opponent seems to act very partisan. I hope you can join me in voting this November for the right candidates.
I want to sincerely thank both of you for taking the time to join us for this Oregon Secretary of State debate. So I think this conversation has benefited Oregonians and voters, and we appreciate your time tonight. And then I'd also like to thank our panel, our political reporter here at KOIN 6, Lisa Balick, and a wonderful coworker, and Peter Wong, for their questions and insight during the course of this debate. And most importantly, thank you at home for participating and sending us your questions. Now, here's the most important part. Don't forget, you have until Tuesday, October 13th, to register to vote here in Oregon. We often have big crowds around that time, so do it early. If you're getting this message now, go out and register to vote. Don't wait till that October 13th deadline. That is the final deadline. The state will begin mailing ballots Wednesday, October 14th, so starting next week, keep an eye out for your ballot. And then, of course, Election Day is Tuesday, November 3rd. As always, you can find all your local election headquarters information online. And if you missed any of this debate, you can watch it in full at KOIN.com. If you would like to watch this debate again, tune in on Saturday, October 17th. It will air at 10 a.m. on KOIN and at 8 p.m. on Portland CW. So that will do it for the Oregon Secretary of State debate here on KOIN 6 tonight. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and have a good night.